Hello guys and welcome back. So in this section we'll talk about modules. Now in JavaScript, everything that was written inside a particular file was generally linked to the window object. So it basically polluted the global scope. But since ES6, every file that is created is considered as a module. So it has its own scope and it doesn't pollute the global scope anymore. Okay, so TypeScript has this great support for ES6, and it is great for providing modularity to the code. It keeps the global scope clean. Okay, and then when there is some case of runtime dependencies wherein a particular file needs to be imported before the other file, there is a great way to do this using module loaders. So all the module loaders out there, like AMD or Systems.js or any other module loader of that sort, figures that out on your own and does all the heavy lifting for you guys. Okay, so there are a lot of great advantages of using modules. Keeping the global scope clean is one of them, but apart from that there are other advantages to it, like it improves your separation of concerns, it helps you manage your code properly, and it makes your code more clean and more easily unit testable, as there aren't long files with a lot of code in it. You can basically create multiple files that contains very specific and individual code, and then you can use code from one particular file into another. To do that though, you'll have to do things like export some variables or function names from a particular file and then import them into the file in which you want to use them. Okay, so you'll have to do things like import and export. Okay, and these are a few syntaxes that can be used to import some variables or methods or classes or functions or interfaces from a particular file. Okay, so let's have a look at that in code. Okay, so I'll just create a folder named modules. Now in this, I'll create a file named interfaces.ts, and then inside the same folder I'll create a file named classes.ts. Okay, and let's say I'll create another file named methods.ts. Okay, so now let's say I go to the interfaces file, and in this I create an interface named I employee. Okay, and this needs to have an ID, which is a number, a name, which is a string, and I guess that would be all. Okay, now suppose I wanted to use this employee interface into my class. I wanted to implement this interface into a class named, say, employee. Okay, now since this interface iEmployee is not a part of the same file and it resides in a different file, that is a different module, we won't be having much visibility regarding that. Okay, so to use iEmployee in my class, I'll have to import it at the top. Okay, so I'll import it from interfaces, but what will I import? If let's say I try to import iEmployee, okay, it's not giving me any sort of an IntelliSense here, and I'm also getting a red squiggly line at the bottom. It says that this particular thing is not a module. Okay, so I haven't exported anything from this particular module, and that's why we are not able to access it in here. Okay, so to do that, what I'll do is export this interface from this file and save this, and now the error is all gone. Okay, and even if I remove this from here, as I press Control Space in my Visual Studio Code, I'll get an intelligence saying that this is something that has been exported from the interfaces module or the interfaces file. Okay, and then I can normally do something like implements I employee, and then I'll have to implement things like ID, which would be of type number, and name, as it suggested, which would be of type string. Okay, now I can export multiple things from an interface. Okay, so suppose I had a function here, say get interface name, and this returned a string named I employee. A very crude example though, but just bear with me. Okay, now if I go back here, I won't be getting that in the suggestions. Why is that? Because that is something that has not been exported from this particular file. Okay, so if I wanted to export this, I'll place an export keyword in front of this function, and then now if I press Control Space here, I'll be getting this. Okay, now what you can also do is you can create aliases for some things that you want to export. Okay, so suppose I wanted to export the iEmployee interface as literally iEmployee interface. Okay, so I could do something like export iEmployee interface. Okay, as, now this as keyword, what this does is it creates an alias for iEmployee. So I'll alias it to iEmployee interface. Okay, now I'll be getting an error though, because I'll have to wrap this inside curly braces, but now it's gone. Okay, so now if I save this, I won't be getting iEmployee here, as I have changed it. So I won't be having access to iEmployee as iEmployee. I'll have access to it as iEmployee interface. So I'll have to import that from there. Okay, and now I won't be having access to the get interface name. So I'll also have to remove that, and I'll have to change this to this. Okay, so this is how you can create, say, multiple files. Okay, create multiple modules, and then supply code from one particular file to another by using imports and exports. You can say export a particular variable or a particular value or an interface from a particular file, then import it like this in some other file, and then use it like this. Okay, so that was modules. Now from the next section we'll talk about Angular CLI, and we'll be focusing on the Angular architecture, and we'll be focusing more on Angular applications. So I'll see you on the other side. Bye.